Hey, my name is Melinda Russell, and I am obsessed with telling the stories of women involved in motorsports, young and older, from all walks of life, currently involved in a wide range of roles or sharing their stories from the past. I'm a wife, mother of four adult children, and a mama of 16. In 2017, I was searching social media for a group dedicated to women in motorsports. When I didn't find what I was looking for, I posted a message to a few racing pages to see if any women would like to connect with me. And now I have thousands of women and men who are part of the Women's Motorsports Network. As crew chief of the only media company dedicated to women in motorsports, I work from wherever my travels take me, publishing this podcast, the Women's Motorsports Network News online magazine, and Let's Talk Racing Live, my social media show. You will hear from women who share their stories from the grid of life, how they manage the messy and memorable moments of family, work, and racing. You will hear their tried and true secrets of success and many other topics like friendships, family, hardships, and heroes that women deal with to balance the seasons of life. So grab your favorite beverage, pull up a seat, make sure you are comfy, and get ready to be inspired and encouraged from the stories on the Women's Motorsports Network podcast. Hello, everyone. This is Melinda Russell with the Women's Motorsports Network podcast. And my guest today is Wendy Crockett, and I'm so happy to have Wendy with me today. We're just celebrated Christmas, and we're probably both really looking forward to the new year. So, Wendy, welcome to the show. I'd like to start, if you would, by telling us a little bit about yourself, where you live, your family, your pets, whatever you would like to share. And then we'll get started about how you got interested in motorsports.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. So, as you said, my name is Wendy Crockett. I am married with one daughter. Her name is Montessa. She's 10 years old. And we just, I have been vetoing getting new pets because I was heartbroken after our golden retrievers passed away at 13 wonderful years. And then I was out of town and my veto power was overruled. And I came home to find that we now have a dog. So,
okay.
Yep. Her name is Katie. She's a wonderful little girl and she is fitting in nicely at home.
And what kind of dog did you get?
She is a rescue. So they think she is part border collie, part Australian shepherd. So she is high energy and she likes to intently stare at all of the squirrels and rabbits and neighbors' dogs that she comes across.
Yeah. Well, I have a Shih Tzu and he is the love of our life. We had to put our dog down in March that we had had for 14 years. And about a year before that happened, we actually got the little dog because we knew the older dog was, getting on. And it is hard to lose an animal, especially when you've had him for so long. But our little dog is just the joy of our life. And, I have kids and grandkids and all that, but nothing like my dog. Love my dog.
Yeah, they're the best. Definitely round out life in a wonderful way.
They certainly do. So tell me a little bit about what we're going to get into the motorsports part, but what else do you like to do besides being involved in racing? What are some other interests that you might have?
My life is pretty much all motorcycles. I'm a motorcycle mechanic by trade, and I owned a shop for about 15 years, and then found that owning a shop limited my riding because our busy season was riding season.
Sure.
And where we were located in the mountains in California, we pretty much had year-round recreation, on-road, off-road, watercraft, everything else.
Yeah.
So after 14, 15 years or so, we moved to where we are now, which is in the Black Hills of South Dakota. And I refocused a little bit. So I do freelance mechanic for motorcycle tour companies. And I'm focused now on touring and training aspect of motorcycles. So luckily, I love what I do, and it takes me all around the world, and cannot complain about that for a minute.
No, absolutely not. And it's just like I was just at the PRI show in Indianapolis, and somebody said, "Oh, you don't have a booth?" Because I had a booth a couple different years, and I said, when you have a booth, you can't walk around and talk to everybody. And it's kind of like having a business. You're stuck at your business, and so you don't get to enjoy the things that you really would like to be doing. And at some point you have to say, no, I'm going to find what makes me happy, and I'm going to combine the two. And that's what you've done with what you're doing with your job. And now you're getting to ride and travel and teach. I assume it's the training part. So yeah. And how long have you been doing that?
That would be the last about 2-3 years.
Okay.
So
All
yeah,
right.
I had a kind of big career shift, following some big wins in my competitive career, and then did a really big ride in 2022. And so coming back from that, it seemed like a good time to shake things up.
Okay. So tell me about that. Tell me about when you say, in your career and about the rides. Tell us a little bit about what that entails.
So my chosen sport is motorcycle long distance endurance competitions. So these take place typically on public roads, but are very carefully managed. We are all tracked. So this is not a speed game. It is a strategy type of event, as with most rallies. So you have checkpoint windows that you have to meet. You often have other ways to accumulate points, and these events can be as short as 8 hours up to 11 days or longer of head-to-head competition. So it is they take place all over the world. And there's always a slightly different spin, but it's a fantastic way to see some really cool things. And ultimately for most people, you're competing against yourself. It is about time management and staying focused and picking a strategy that allows you to maximize your ranking without overshooting, because that's, you miss a checkpoint window or you oversleep or, anything else. It's not a good long-term game plan. So
no,
I really enjoy the puzzle aspect of it. And, always something new and interesting to see.
So now, do they let you know what the routes are going to be or not?
It totally depends on the event. You have some events, some organizers have a very fixed route with limited time windows, or they'll have time windows that are different for each rider. So each rider has a target time where they're let out of the checkpoint, and so their target window is different by a few minutes when they need to arrive to the next checkpoint. Some of them, they will give you a list of bonus locations, that is places that you need to visit, things you need to do in order to accumulate points. Some of them will give those to you well in advance, so you can spend time planning before the event starts. Some of them don't give you your bonus locations until you are on the clock. So as soon as they hand you that pack of locations, that clock is ticking, and you are trying to plan the best possible event to accumulate as many points as you can without missing your checkpoint window. All the while that clock is ticking down. So it can definitely be a high stress environment depending on what your goals are.
I was getting stressed just listening to that, thinking that's a lot to handle in it's like, here you go. And it's like, what do I do first? So
absolutely,
when you're on the motorcycle, you all have the same route, but do you have like vehicles that follow along somewhere? I assume that carry your, where you sleep and different things, or how does that work? Are they way behind? And
so the vast majority of us, especially in the big events. So the biggest competition is the Iron Butt Rally, and the tagline is 11 days, 11,000 miles, but everybody plans their own route. So the only thing you know is everybody is leaving from the same spot and everybody has the same checkpoint destination. So those are your parameters. So for example, there is Iron Butt Association Mexico. Everybody in those events have the exact same route. The key is going to be precision on your checkpoint windows. In the US, the vast majority of people compete as individuals, and they plan their own route from beginning to end, with the checkpoint being their only fixed points. Okay. So it is a unsupported event. You are not allowed to have a chase truck. You are not allowed to have a pit crew. You are allowed to avail yourself of any resources that are available to any other competitor. So that is to say, if something goes wrong with your vehicle, or if you plan to have a service mid-rally, something like that, you are allowed to go to a shop and have your bike serviced, but you need to be there with your bike. You are not allowed to have them come pick it up or send it with a friend to go have the servicing handled. So you always need to be part of what is happening with your vehicle. What most people do, what I do is once we are aware of the location of the checkpoints, I will send a box ahead, and that'll have usually a spare wheel. So I'll have a new tire on the spare wheel. I can just do a wheel swap real quick. It might have oil, clean clothes, something to replenish my snacks, because all of us, we generally plan to eat on the bike. We stay hydrated on the bike. Anything that we can do to limit distractions and increase your efficiency, we have planned for on our bike. So that'll be the point at a checkpoint where I'll send all my dirty clothes home and restock some of those supplies. But it really is, for the vast majority of people, as I said, you're kind of competing against yourself, trying to set a personal best. So it's not at all unusual for riders to help each other. In fact, it's in the rules of most of these events. If you came upon a rider that was in trouble, if you came upon a rider with a flat tire, ran out of gas, as long as they're in a safe spot, that is their poor planning. If you came across a rider that is injured or with serious mechanical difficulty or in a unsafe location, you must stop and render assistance. But even outside of that, at the starting line at checkpoints, it's not at all unusual for riders to be helping each other, because me helping you figure out how some repair is made is not going to make the difference between our finishing positions. It's just the sportsman-like thing to do.
Exactly. And it's karma. At some point, it might be you on the side of the road.
Exactly.
And the other thing we know is that there's no better family than the motorsports family.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
So that would just be common sense, that people that do this are going to help each other regardless. Mm-hmm. Because like you said, you're not really competing against them anyway, per se. So what kind of motorcycle do you ride?
I have primarily done my major competitions on a Yamaha FJR. And up until now, I have done almost all of my competitions on the same Yamaha FJR. So I've got about 300,000 miles on that bike. Now, my husband proposed to me with a match set of FJRs. And that bike now lives in the American Motorcyclist Association Hall of Fame in Pickerington, Ohio, which is a fantastic place for it to live out its days, in my opinion. But yes. I've done everything. A lot of people feel like in order to get into these types of competitions, you need to have a specific bike. You need to have specific accessories, things like that. I've done competitions on everything from 100cc Chinese bike to my sidecar rig to anything in between you can imagine. People have done it on scooters and vintage bikes and all sorts of things. So as long as you're having fun, as long as you're comfortable on the bike, it's fun to just get out there and see what you can do.
Oh, and it's just so different from what we typically consider racing. Right? It's really not. I mean, how would you define it compared to like a race where you're racing against somebody. Here you're trying to earn points for yourself. So those points involve getting to the checkpoint at the right time and not missing a checkpoint and all those things. And the bonus. Is there any other ways to earn points?
No, so they'll often have it within the bonuses. Some of those might be visiting someplace and taking a picture. Some of it might involve a hike or like a tour, or you might have to go run around in a museum and find a specific exhibit or something along those lines. Some of them are you get points for stopping at a real sit-down restaurant and having a meal. And so you would document that with a receipt and a picture of your meal. Some of them require sleep bonuses. So obviously they can't force you to sleep, but you have to document when you stop, and you have like a 4 to 8 hour window that you must be stationary. You can't claim any other bonuses or make any forward progress in that time. So that's the best they can do to try to make everybody get sufficient sleep.
Right.
So,
and the fact that they want you to stop and have a meal, that to me is also a way for them to make sure that you're getting some nutrition other than a snack bar and a bottle of water while you're driving the bike, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So, there's always, you're always weighing those options. And is it worth it today for me to stop and do that? Or is there something more worth my while further down the road? And that's all part of the strategy. But ultimately, as with any sort of competition, be it, a race or a rally or anything else, neglecting your own well-being is not a good long-term strategy. So it is really vital to make sure you're getting sufficient sleep, you're staying hydrated, your nutrition is not being neglected, especially on these longer events. And it's, I find myself, I'm so in tune to like those 10, 11 day events that when I go to a shorter event, it's very easy for me to just not drink water. I don't stretch on the bike. I don't make any effort to, take care of myself because it seems so short in comparison. And you're really feeling it the next day. You can feel a lot worse after 24 hours than you do after 11 days if you're not focused on taking care of yourself.
Yeah, I was just thinking when you were talking about only 8 hours, my husband and I are bikers, and I had to kind of give up a little bit after I had my back surgery. I sold my bike, but he has a Yamaha FZ1. It doesn't have 300,000 miles on it, but it's got a lot of miles on it. And so we just ride to dinner in that, and he rides it a lot around home, but I was thinking about the trip we took to Tennessee. And we took off one morning and got our Subway sandwiches, and we took off and went over the mountains and all this. And we ended up being gone more than around 8, maybe 10 hours. Oh, my butt was hurting. That's why they call it the iron butt, right? Because
Exactly.
It was a long day to be on a bike. And so, you say 8 hours, that's in one day, you're riding 8 hours, right? Yeah, in a shorter event.
Yeah, it's not unusual to ride 24 straight hours and then, maybe butt up a meal break and a rest break right next to each other, or something like that, depending on the strategy. But I own a FC1 as well, and I've done, my first several iron butt rides I did on the FC1. But definitely the best money I have ever put into my bike is a custom seat.
Absolutely.
And I have a Russell Daylong seat, and that makes all the difference in the world. Because I've had FJRs have started just finding me like lost puppies, and I've got like 8 of them now. And I stick to the Gen 1 FJRs, generally speaking, because I can swap my seat and my other comfort accessories between bikes. It makes so much, you hop on the stock seat. I picked up a 2006 the other day and hopped on that stock seat. I'm like, what is this misery?
It's just like sitting on a rock.
It is.
There's no cushion. My husband has a nicer seat. We bought a nicer seat, and the one for the passenger. But it's not like the seat you're talking about. But it's at least it's not the standard that comes with it. But I mean, as somebody who's ridden, motorcycle short places, and then I hear you say you're going to ride for 24 hours. How do you prepare ahead of time to not get sleepy, or, all the things you need to do? I mean, halfway through, most people would be starving. They'd be so hungry. How do you prepare for all that?
So when I first started getting into these competitions, I basically treated it like a vacation. So I was just, picking up whatever junk food was at gas stations. And this was in 2009. So, now it's a lot easier to find healthier options at truck stops and things like that. It's a lot more common to find fresh fruit or
Right.
things along those lines. But, back then I was like, a corn dog, and I'm going to eat it while I'm going down the road. And then I'm feeling bad because I just ate this fatty, greasy food. So now I'm going to have a soda or a coffee. So I have the energy rush. And now I'm chasing that caffeine crash and the sugar crash. And it is an endless cycle. So
Yeah.
it took me a few years to really, really fine tune my routine, where I exercise religiously, really focus on core exercises and things like that relieve kind of those stresses that you put on your body when you underestimate just how many muscles you use sitting on a
Oh, yeah.
motorcycle all day.
Yeah.
I make an effort to stretch, kind of use the wind as resistance and do, yoga type moves on the bike to keep my blood flowing, keep my muscles moving. But I also stick really strictly to a diet. Generally speaking, unless they're giving me points to have a meal bonus, everything that I eat for the entirety of a rally will come out of my tank bag, except for meals at checkpoints. So that's going to be, no sugar or natural sugars in fruits, no caffeine, drink lots and lots of water, stick to like unsalted nuts, nut butters, dried fruit that aren't sweetened, and then pick up fresh fruit or veggies whenever I can. Carrots are really tank bag friendly. Sometimes jerkies that are, unsweetened, nice and soft. So things like that, I found over time that are stable in my tank bag, that are easy to eat with gloves on. And so by doing all of that, when you become dehydrated, when you become fatigued, one of the first symptoms is you have a decreased ability to assess your own level of fatigue at that point. So by eliminating all of the greasy food, all the sugary stuff, all the caffeine stuff, it really helps me stay on top of where my fatigue level is at.
Yeah.
And then, something that you can just learn from experience. I can ride all day long, and then like right after the sun goes down, my brain just kind of goes beep into shutdown mode, and I am not sleepy. It's just kind of like road weary. Yeah. So at that point, if I stop, I'll have a stretch off the bike. I'll go have a conversation with somebody at a gas stop or whatever. That'll perk my brain up. And then I know the very next time that I'm feeling sleepy, whether that is an hour later or 5 hours later, then I stop for sleep, because ultimately nothing will help fatigue other than sleep.
Yeah.
So it's just being aware of yourself and how to best manage those cycles, and your nutrition and hydration plays a huge role in that.
Yeah, and I would guess that most of the riders, unless they're new and they haven't learned all this, do the same, similar to what you do, or are you maybe a little bit more prepared for the adventure ahead as far as the food and the drink and what to avoid?
I think everybody's got a bit of a learning curve, and it depends. A lot of the bigger events are kind of a lottery to get in. So some people may have a much longer riding history before they get into some of these big events. And that allows them to build their strategy over time. But, ultimately nothing compares to those big events. So it's something you just got to do to see what works for you. And there are things, in a 24-hour event that don't quite work for an 11-day event. And there were things that worked great in my 11-day event that didn't work in my Guinness World Record ride.
Yeah.
Because, you know, where a single day, you'd say that's the sprint to the Iron Butt Rally's marathon, the 11-day Iron Butt Rally is a sprint compared to this, you know, 100,000-mile ride
Right.
that we did for the world record. So,
yeah,
you know, there's things that work, strategies across all of the rides, and some of them you just got to get out there and do it.
So before we talk about all those crazy, amazing things that you've set the records for, you know, you're doing this. You've got lots of awards and things that people know who you are and what you do. Is this something that, you know, like how did you even know that this was an event or something? How do people find out about it? What if somebody's listening and they're like, I'd like to try that. How did you find out about it, and how did you get started doing this?
So I didn't come from a motorcycle family. It was just something that always spoke to me. So as soon as I turned 18 and moved out of my parents' house, I bought a motorcycle. And as soon as I kind of got the feel for it, I had a, you know, kind of a little mishmash of friends that rode motorcycles, but not much. Just I grew up in Los Angeles, and so we'd do little rides outside of the city. And eventually I decided that motorcycles was what I wanted to do for a living. And so I moved to Phoenix, Arizona to go to Motorcycle Mechanics Institute there. And so now I had a group of friends around me that were much more dedicated motorcyclists. But I still found myself, you know, kind of every weekend going, all right, guys, we said kickstands up at 8:00. And, you know, now it's noon. Where are you? I want to, you know, let's get out and ride. And as my confidence grew as a rider and as a mechanic, I started realizing I don't need your permission. I don't even need your company. I'm leaving at 8. And if you want to ride with me, be here at 8.
Right.
And what I found was that I don't really have any sort of internal off switch. So without other people riding with me to be like, now we need to stop for a meal, or, you know, those guys would stop for a cigarette or whatever else, I would just keep going. And I found I really, really just loved experiencing life from the saddle. And I would go out and see how many states I could hit before I had to be back to school on Monday, you know, see how far. And I was doing this for several years. Really kind of this was like the beginning of the internet age. And so I did this for probably 5 years, maybe a little more, until I stumbled upon on the internet the Iron Butt Association. And I was like, oh my goodness, there are others out here that are just like me. And so for many people, they hear about like Iron Butt rides and the distance rides and things like that. And they have that as a goal. And for the vast majority of the Iron Butt Association members, they do a single ride to get their membership, and then they'll never do another endurance ride. And so it is something that people build up to. And then there's other people like me that are just built to not have an off switch.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, over the years, there's been a lot more interesting events and different ways that you can participate in the sport. Some of them are not exactly competitions. They're not head-to-head competitions. Some of them are just certificate long distance rides. There are others that are like months long or all year long that you are keeping track of your distances or certain types of places visited and things like that, that are a bit more of a loose competition. And that is a fun way to start if you want to get a feel for how to handle bonus locations and waypoints and fixed time type of destinations and things like that. It's a really, really good place to start.
Okay. So what is your husband? He stays home with the daughter. He's not a rider anymore.
He does ride. He's not. He rightfully thinks that we are all crazy that does competitions.
That did kind of cross my mind, but I didn't want to say it.
Yeah, but he is super supportive. The vast majority of the time, if he can swing it, he and my daughter are at checkpoints or at the finish line. And he, we were talking about earlier, he is just as likely to have a tire machine and a bunch of tools and things like that at a checkpoint available to any rider, as he is to be helping me out with something. He enjoys that aspect of it, being in the action without all the stress.
Right. So how often are the checkpoints? Like if you did have a problem, are they hours apart from each other? It's different? Sometimes they're close to each other. How does that work?
So in a large event like the Iron Butt Rally, which is 11 days, there might be 2 or 3 checkpoints over the course of the event. So every few days, you would have a checkpoint. And typically you would know before you came to the start of the rally where those checkpoints are going to be. And so that allows you to maybe ship things ahead if you anticipate having service issues. On shorter events, they might be every 100 miles or 200 miles thereabout. Some of the events try to strategically place them so you are less than a tank of gas apart.
Yeah.
So
when you talk about strategy, I've heard you say that many, many times today. Strategy as far as what route I'm going to take if you have that choice, or what is it that you're strategizing about?
So people have a lot of different goals. A lot of people, their primary goal is just to be able to finish. They just want the bragging right that they've been able to finish this event. Some people want to go see and do really interesting things. So they will deliberately pick locations and bonus opportunities that seem fun to them, whether or not they have a really good return on their points and time investment.
Okay.
And then the people that are looking to win are obviously looking to get as many points as possible. But within these events, there are oftentimes other puzzle elements. And that could be things like a thread bonus. And that is, for example, you might have for the entire rally or even a leg, there might be 400 different bonus point opportunities.
Wow.
And it's like a buffet. You can't eat them all. You will get sick. So you need to find, the 10 or the 20 or what have you that allow you to maximize your points without missing your next checkpoint window. But then within those, there might be like thread bonuses where each of those, say 5 bonuses have a standalone point value of 100 points. But if you get all 5 of those, now it's worth 100,000 points. Just throwing out wild examples.
Yeah.
So you need to be really, really careful about planning your route so you're not missing any of those and thus negating the amount of effort you've put in to get the other 4 if you miss number 5.
Right.
So there's all sorts of different and different years they've had different events. You might treat bonus points as money, where some bonus locations earn you money and some spend money. And the goal is to come in as close to 0 as possible without missing any of your time windows. Things like that. So they try to keep it very interesting. They also try to limit, as technology has evolved in GPSs and routing and using our phones and things like that. They really try to create really interesting, engaging puzzles that limit the effectiveness of technology.
Okay.
So it becomes very difficult to feed all these different variables into technology and just have it spit out something for you that is going to work. You really need to invest yourself into understanding what the puzzle is, what they're trying to accomplish, and what you can do to maximize it. So
is this something that, like, how many of these in 2025, do you know how many of these different events you're going to do?
The Iron Butt Rally typically happens every 2 years. And the shorter events, so you've got events like the Heart of Texas or The Valkyrie Rally is an all women's rally that's really cool. And those typically happen annually. So there's a lot more of the smaller events, the day or a couple of day events are obviously a lot easier to put on logistically than a multi-week event. And then there's a lot of like I said, the other kind of ride to eat style events, or the ones that are just checkpoint to checkpoint type events. Okay. So in the course of any given year, there will be several in any given region of the US. There will be many in countries around the world. And even, in places like Australia, there was a group called the Far Riders. I think they have disbanded, but there's similar groups still that have kind of an organized ride to eat, where it's basically you can leave from wherever you want. You ride into basically what is a single time limited checkpoint window. And then once that window is done, and people ride from all over Australia to hang out for a couple of hours together and share a meal, and then everybody goes home. And so that's just a different way to kind of track everybody's rides and keep track of everybody's speeds and distances and things like that. So
is this year the year for the Iron Butt, or was it last year?
Last year. So 23, 25.
All right. So why don't you tell our listeners about all those accomplishments that you've, the Guinness Book and all those kinds of things, because that's, to me, it's just amazing. I just can't even imagine. So tell us, don't be shy. Tell us all about that.
Well, my very first rally ever was the 2009 Iron Butt Rally. And, most people start small and build up, but I figured, go big or go home. I will throw my hat in the ring. Because in my mind, like, this was the ultimate long distance event. And, I knew I could do the miles. There was no question in my mind. I've done, plenty of long distance rides. But I figured, what if I get into this and I find that the puzzle element doesn't suit me, and then I'll be sad. Like if I do a smaller event and I'm like, well, this isn't my style. And then I walk away. I would always kind of feel that I had missed out on the opportunity. So I threw my name in the ring, and I got picked my first year in 2029. And after that rally, which I finished successfully, I think I finished 26th that year out of 100 and some odd riders.
Wow.
And so I was like, I do like this. I do enjoy this. So then I started kind of seeking out the smaller rallies, and flash forward to now, I have started and completed 6 Iron Butt rallies, which is more than any other woman, all on the same FJR, which is more than any other single bike. And in 2019, I became the first and to date only woman to win the Iron Butt Rally. Mm-hmm. And that was a good year for me because, as we've discussed so far, your physical conditioning is really important. Your diet is really important. Paying attention to that puzzle is really important. And it just so happened in 2019 that the way they worked the puzzle is where they typically give you waypoints to work with. In that year, the waypoints were only somewhere within a 100-mile radius of the actual bonus location. So a lot of people that were used to the way puzzles had been done in the past, or they were leaning too heavily on their technology, missed the point that when they are routing to this intersection, they have 100 miles to go, still to get to the bonus. And so that threw a lot of people for a loop. In addition to the physical demands of, some of these required a 5-mile hike or, something along those lines. So there was really a lot of reading comprehension and a lot of getting your head out of the GPS in order to make it happen that year. So it was definitely my year.
Yeah.
But
so when you're doing that and you get to, your final destination, how long, do you know as soon as you get there that you've won it, or does it take a while till everybody's done, or how does that work?
Yeah. So you have, we have a window that we have to be in at the end as well. So with each checkpoint, there is the checkpoint opening window, there's a penalty window, and then you are disqualified. So that's works the same as the finish at the finish line as well. You have your good window, your penalty points window, and your disqualification. And for many people that have won, they have extended into that penalty window at the end simply because it was worthwhile for whatever points they were gathering. In my case, I just happened to slide in just a couple minutes before penalty points, and then you go into scoring, and then you go to sleep, and then you have like all day long to sit and dwell about how well you did, because generally speaking, you don't have a very good idea of how other people are doing over the course of events. And depending on the event, and depending on the year, oftentimes they will do updates at each checkpoint and give standings at each checkpoint. But depending on how frequently or infrequently those checkpoints are on any given event, you may not have a good idea. As in 2019, there was a really long, and I think it was 6 or 7 days, we were given the option to skip a checkpoint. So there was like 6 or 7 days where I had no idea what anybody else was doing out there. And that's a big part of it too. Not only do you have to be happy with your own company, you have to, understand that in the course of this event, you're going to be sitting there going, I screwed up. Why is that bike going the opposite direction right now?
Yeah.
What did he see that I didn't see? What have I missed? What's going on? So that is, that's definitely a big part of that game is planning your route and sticking to it. And then you just don't know until the banquet after you check into the finish line how anybody did. So
how often do you see other bikers though?
It again totally depends. There are some years where it's not unusual for you to share the road with somebody for a whole tank of gas, or there will be big point value locations that a lot of people will converge. And then there will be other events where you don't see anybody for days. You might not see anybody, from an hour outside the checkpoint all the way until the next checkpoint window.
Okay. Wow. This is just so interesting. And I knew enough about it to be dangerous, but I've learned so much from you today. So now you hold a Guinness World Record.
Yeah. So
how did that come about?
Well, tying in a few of the things we've talked about so far, it is very infrequent. Some people compete in these events as a team, sometimes 2 up on the same bike. Sometimes people form a team with 2 or more people on separate bikes. But the vast majority of the time, people are riding solo. And it is really infrequent for people to share the road for more than a tank of gas or so, that people's routes happen to overlap until somebody needs to stop, and then they wave each other goodbye. Well, in the 2019 rally, it just so happened that there were a series of thread bonuses where they were huge point value, but you really had to disregard all of your other opportunities and just focus on getting all of those thread bonuses to make it worth your while. So twice in the course of this event, I found myself sitting at the first bonus in a series of threads waiting for the availability window to open up with another rider. His name was Ian McPhee. And we just, because of the structure of this event, we ended up sharing huge amounts of the rally, sharing the road together. And we found, even though we're competing with each other, right? So we didn't share what our plans were, but it was pretty obvious that we had the same, approximate goal in mind. We found we had a really similar pattern. We were happy keeping a similar pace. We had about the same fuel range. We were both ready to stop for a nap at the same time. And so we kept in touch after the rally. And he called me up later that year and he goes, I have this idea for something bigger. And it's not exactly a competition, but again, in that spirit of competing with yourself, he said, I want to ride, all 49 states that you can ride to in alphabetical order, visiting the state capital of each state. So, the first handful of states, we're talking Montgomery, Alabama, Juneau, Alaska, Phoenix, Arizona, Little Rock, Arkansas, you know, and so it was a
Back
big
and
ride.
forth all over the place.
All over, bouncing around the country. And again, I mean, any excuse is as good as any other excuse when you're happy to be on the bike. But I was like, well, that sounds absurd. We should totally do that. We started looking at what this would entail. And the base route came out to about 60,000 miles and change. And then we found that in order to get a Guinness World Record for this, the benchmark was not that much higher. It was like 72,000 miles or something, you know, in that ballpark. We're like, we could totally do that. We'll add another 10,000 miles on there. And then so all of this planning process is taking place over the pandemic. So I was in lockdown in Mexico. He was in lockdown in Australia. So we had all the time in the world to make this bigger and sillier. So we decided ultimately, I don't know if you've ever heard of a motorcyclist named Dave Barr. He was an incredible guy. He was a double amputee. He lost both of his legs in a accident in the military, and had several Guinness World Records, not just as a guy with no legs riding around the world, but just world records for any human being stop. So he was a really amazing guy. He was my neighbor in California. And so as an homage to Dave, we planned ultimately for a ride to match his Guinness World Record mileage. Now, you know, obviously the accomplishment is different. We're doing this as a team and not around the world, not as amputees, but still we thought it was, you know, a really cool show of respect for Dave. And that beautifully laid out plan worked well for about 70 miles outside of home before the wheels totally came off of our plan, and then it was chaos from then on out. But we did ultimately manage to drag it through to fruition in spite of everything that could go wrong going wrong. But it definitely became more of a fighting Murphy's Law than it was actually being able to do the miles. But we ended up successfully doing the longest continuous journey in a single country by a team. And our total distance was 80,208 miles, I think, in 119 days.
Wow.
So, and this was a ride that was supposed to be 83,000 miles in 83 days. So that'll tell you just how wrong everything went. But
so does weather contribute to that?
Their weather was definitely not on our side, but it was not really one of the main contributing factors, you know, as difficult as it is, because in any of these endurance events, there is no latitude given for weather.
No.
You know, I've ridden very near, you know, tornado. I've ridden in the, you know, outskirts of terrible winds of tornadoes. I've ridden through 2 hurricanes, you know, in just horrific heat and humidity and wind and anything else. There is no leeway given at all.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of that same mindset going into the Guinness ride is, you know, it is what it is. The route takes us where it takes us. And there was some marginally better ability to route around really dangerous weather because it was a route of our own making. But, you know, ultimately there's only so many different ways you can connect 2 spots. So, but no.
What time of year did you do this? When did you start and when did you quit?
We actually started in Australia, and because we had never ridden together as a team before, we replicated the alphabetical state plan in Australia. My riding partner is Australian, so we started there in on April Fool's Day 2022 because that suited our sense of humor we were taking into this
Yeah.
whole ride. Finished that ride and then started in the US without giving too much away, because we did write a book about it. And
Okay.
there was because so much was going awry, the start in the US did not go at all according to plan.
Okay.
So I will say that we started the Guinness portion of the ride on May 29th.
All right.
So we did have one blizzard, and then we had multiple like world record setting days of like rainfall and record
yeah.
heat and you
Yeah.
know everything else that it could possibly chuck at us. But you know, when you are doing a ride of that duration, there's only so much assurance that you can have
Oh,
that
yeah.
you know you'll either be starting when it's too cold or ending when it's too
Yeah.
cold.
Yeah.
So
That's just, there's not enough months in the year where the weather's perfect to do all
exactly.
that. That's why I wondered, you know, when did you start? So you've got the Guinness Guinness record. So now tell me about your book. What's the name of the book and where can we find that?
The name of the book is Pushing Miles, a chronicle of motorcycles, mayhem, and metal. And that is on most of the major platforms. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It is on the ebook in various platforms, and the audiobook should be coming out before too long. That's what I was doing in Australia just now, is we voiced the audiobook ourselves. And that
Okay.
is in the final mastering process. But, you know, we went into this ride going, we are two long distance riding professionals. We've got 2 million miles between the two of us. We have handled, we've got, I mean, between the two of us, easily 500,000 miles just in competition type rides. We have got this nailed, and there will be no story to tell at the end of it. You know, we'll get off at the end and go, well, that went fine, and that'll be the end of that. And that is not what happened at all.
Well, I can't wait to read the book. I love to read, so I can't wait to get the book and read it. Because it sounds like, you know, best laid plans never go like we think, do they?
Exactly.
No.
So if you know, you can go to pushingmiles.com and click on the book link, and that'll give a full list of where you can buy it, and you will be able to see when the audiobook comes out as well.
Okay, pushingmiles.com. Easy enough. Well, Wendy, what have we not covered that I just totally missed about your story?
Oh man. I think that's a lot of the high points. I mean, there's a lot of with motorcycles being my life, and there's a lot of amazing things I've been lucky enough to do, and a lot of the tangential kind of things, but with the focus on motorsports, I think we've really nailed it. I would really encourage anybody that's at all interested. Love to see more women coming into the sport.
I was going to ask you, I'm assuming there's mostly men, but are there getting to be more and more women competing this way?
There are, yeah. And, you know, when I started, there was only just a very, very few women in the sport. And so a lot of us are working hard to draw more women in and really help them to gain the skills that they need to get in and be competitive. So definitely I would suggest any of the women that are interested, look up the Valkyrie Rally. And let me give you a web address here.
Okay.
But they have it is vmrally.com.
Okay.
And that is not just the rally, but it's the entire community. So they have a really active Facebook community. And the idea is, we don't just all show up at the starting line as competitors. We help women with all these kinds of questions that we've talked about. How do you handle waypoints? How do you plan a route? how do I know how far I can go in a day? How do I make sure that I get those windows? How, all of these things that kind of make people nervous going in. We help each other answer those questions and, really come in with a lot of confidence and support into the event. So it is a fantastic, and it is ultimately, a head-to-head rally, and there's winners and finishers. But I am extremely proud that I rode in the inaugural Valkyrie Rally, and the first and to date only rally that I ever competed with as part of a team was with my daughter. And just a couple of days after she turned 9 years old, she completed the rally with me in our sidecar rig.
That's awesome.
Yes.
And Wendy, those are the things that I just love about stories that I hear from women, because I mean, I'm not saying that men don't tell similar stories, but they don't really, that I hear. But it's the things like that. It's way more than a motorcycle rally. It was something you and your daughter did. She'll never forget it. You'll never forget it. Those are the things that just mean so much more than anything else you could possibly do.
Absolutely. One of my proudest events for sure, sharing that with my daughter.
Yeah. So do you know who Renee Brinkerhoff is?
No.
You should Google her. She's driven on all 7 continents.
Awesome.
Not a motorcycle, but you should Google her. She's got an interesting, kind of similar story, but about she's been on all the continents. Yeah. Very cool. So
put that on my reading list.
Put that on your reading list. Well, Wendy, I appreciate so much your time. We're just a couple days after Christmas, and I'm sure you had other things you could have been doing, but you chose to spend the time with me, and I really appreciate that. So
yeah, I'm excited to have been able to sit and chat with you today.
Absolutely. So last thing, how can people follow what you're doing? Is there someplace, Facebook, Instagram, a website, someplace where they could get on and say, oh, Wendy's going to be racing this, and this, and just so they can kind of follow what you're doing?
Yep. Pushing Miles has a list of events and things, and that typically includes any of the rallies or competitions that I'm going to be in. It includes, travel that's open. I'm doing a women's tour in Nepal. That's not a competition, but that's listed, on there, those types of things. Any of the interesting training days or event appearances, things like that, they can all find on the website. But they can, I'm on Facebook under both Pushing Miles and Wendy Crockett, and Instagram under Pushing Miles as well.
Okay. All right. Well, they should be able to find you then one way or the other for sure.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah. Well, Happy New Year. I hope that you have a great 2025. I'm definitely going to be one of your new followers to kind of keep track of what you're up to. And anytime you want to come back and tell us more about your adventures, you're always welcome.
That's awesome. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, Melinda.
Thank you for listening to the Women's Motorsports Network podcast. Subscribe to my show and follow me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. If you or someone you know would like to be featured in the Women's Motorsports Network News online magazine, this podcast, or Let's Talk Racing Live, my social media show, contact me via Messenger on Facebook at Melinda Russell, or send me an email at womensmotorsportsnetwork@gmail.com.